Welcome to another session of Business Startup Training. Today we'll be looking at who is to blame for the crisis. Who is to blame? Who? Who should be point? Who is responsible? This is presented by accounting lecturer. So by the end of the session we'll go through who is to blame for this crisis. So our objectives are: is China the one responsible? Is the World Health Organization to be blamed? Are the individual countries to be blamed? What lessons can we learn from this crisis? And then we will conclude. Now, in China, if we were to look at China being responsible, China has lots of wet markets. And this is one of them here. And it's a breeding ground of with the virus in this instance. So China is a country where the virus began. So to a degree, I would say to a large degree, they are to be blamed in that regard. China has a history of eating rare animals, which they eat snakes, they eat bats, they eat several different animals. And I think those animals have various viruses and diseases. And that is a problem and has been a problem in light of this corona issue. China did not take the virus outbreak seriously. So when the outbreak took place, they did not, close the area down early, and they allowed people to move in and out, and therefore that caused a lot of problem. The virus spread significantly within China and then the rest of the world. China was hiding facts about the outbreak in the early stages. I think they were ignoring it. They took it lightly, and so therefore that created a problem. So therefore, I would say that would be, they were to be blamed in that regard. They facilitated the running of the wet markets, and these markets may not have been controlled. There may not have been a lot of regulation in terms of how animals were handled, and therefore that created the problem as well. China made a choice to eat these animals, and if one makes a decision to eat an animal that normally other people may not necessarily eat, it's your responsibility, and therefore you should not have that responsibility shared by others who are innocent. Innocent people are dying due to the fact that you've decided to eat or have a particular animal. If you want to eat that animal and suffer the consequences, then you should do it by yourself and not have others suffer in that regard. In terms of the World Health Organization, are they to be blamed? Now, the World Health Organization, as you know, was established in 1948. It's mainly focused on public health. It looks at epidemic control, quarantine, drug standards, League of Nations. It looks at League of Nations there in terms of nations of the world, and they're managing and controlling health-related issues. They look at promoting the highest possible level of health in people. So World Health Organization defines health positively as a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. So World Health Organization focuses on health all over the world, and they monitor diseases, etc. And so therefore they have some questions to answer in this epidemic issue here. One of the responsibilities is to promote health well-being around the world. So again, when they saw the virus outbreak in China, they may not have been promoting the well-being of everybody by kind of not managing it as well as they should. So I would say they did not manage the crisis by sounding the alarm. They needed to sound an alarm to the rest of the world to say, be cautious. And I don't think they did that in the early stages. Weeks into the crisis, they did not call it an epidemic. They said it's something we're watching at the moment, and then following, in the weeks afterwards, they called it an epidemic, and therefore it then, spiraled the crisis, but they should have called it an epidemic earlier. Now, in terms of the individual countries who have suffered significantly, the decision about social distancing, in some instances, I would say in most instances, the decision to implement social distancing was late. A lot of people contracted the virus unnecessarily due to the fact that social distancing was done a little bit late, and so. And to some degree, the countries are to be blamed in that regard. People's lives were being gambled on due to the financial implications? I think that's something to look at. You could have easily saved a lot of lives had you made that decision a little bit earlier. Canceling public gathering, that needed also to have been done earlier as well. Closing borders to outside world in terms of planes coming in, so that needed to be done earlier, and to control and quarantine people who are coming in. Also, quarantine of those who have the virus, that needed to be implemented earlier. The support to businesses, I don't think businesses felt the support of the government. The government said they're going to support, but that support was not felt. And so the plan in terms of giving financial support so that the job losses on the scale that we currently have, did not occur, or would not have occurred, did not take place. And so therefore that was a problem. I don't think that support was forthcoming as the government envisioned. And so we're struggling in that regard. So yeah, that's something that's needing to be looked into. Now, in terms of the lessons to learn from the crisis, what are some of the lessons to learn? We cannot take an outbreak that takes place in distant land as something to ignore. We had Ebola some years ago. We had bird flu also. We have SARS. And now we have Corona. We can't take it lightly, and countries need to be very, very careful and need to always engage in research and development, regardless of you need to take things seriously and not assume that you will not be impacted due to the fact that it's far away from you, because as a world we are all connected. The World Health Organization needed to communicate. They could have communicated a little bit more earlier, and that would have allowed for a better transition. We need to have research on vaccine and on various diseases, because I'm sure there's a lot of diseases out there that if there were to be another outbreak, we would struggle significantly. So we would need to be continuously researching and developing to guard against that. In terms of the World Health Organization, they need to look closer at outbreaks and not ignore early signs. Also provide financial buffer. Countries need to put some contingencies in place way beforehand. Be willing to make the hard decisions early, because sometimes you don't want to make the hard decisions, and you might need to do so in the early stages. So to conclude, who is to be blamed? Is China to be blamed? I think China has some responsibility in this epidemic. Is the World Health Organization to be blamed? They have some, also some responsibility as well. Countries, are they to be blamed? Yes, to a degree. They have some, to answer for. Some of the deaths could have been avoided. And what lessons to learn? We learn now that we have to be very careful, and we need to respond immediately and not take things lightly. Like, share, subscribe. Thank you.